IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of This Round is on Me. So a quick industry update before we dive into today's episode. Last week, I attended the NRAI's Cloud Kitchen Convention in Mumbai, which was a superb day of hearing from the frontrunners in the industry, like everything from achieving profitability to scaling, raising investment, marketing best practices, and lots more. So, if you're already in the business or planning on entering it, you definitely want to check out some of the sessions, which you'll find on NRAI's Facebook page. And going by the turnout and the number of people who had to be turned away due to capacity, the delivery space is definitely one to watch. In other exciting news, Asia's 50 best bars list was just announced. Well, it's only the extended list so far of 51 to 100 that's out. And we have 3 new entrants from India making it on the list. So congrats to them all. The top 50 are announced on the 28th of April. So check out at 50 Best Bars on Instagram for updates. Speaking of lists, there's been a bit of noise in the industry about these very kind of quote unquote lists and the veracity of these or not. Is it just the same old, same old? Are people bothering to actually dig a little deeper and really discover new upcoming talent? How can we as an industry make this a better, more transparent process? So if you have any thoughts, would love to hear from you. So drop me a message on Instagram or Twitter or wherever you can find me. And now back to today's program. So here's some food for thought. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of cannabis? To many, it would signify a drug that is not just illegal, but is associated with parties and addiction. But a group of 6 co-founders are not just attempting to change that perception, but with their startup, they argue that the cannabis plants can in fact help in uplifting the socioeconomic conditions of farmers. To share more insights, the guest of my show today is Yash Kotak, co-founder and chief marketing officer of Bombay Hemp Company, or BOHECO as it's more popularly known. Yash has always directed his efforts towards socially relevant causes, from being an active participant in social setups to heading multiple campaigns on behalf of BOHECO. Yash has been instrumental in setting up their D2C health and wellness narrative. He's been featured in the Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 list and named the top influential global youth marketing professional. Join us after a quick break.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to co-founder and CEO of Yoga Bar, Suhasini Sampath. She shares the secrets behind making energy bars without preservatives. On Voices for Water, Karthik asks Dr. Bhakti Devi, founding president Water Resources Council, about water literacy in India. On Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka explains the concept of a financial slam book. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh ponder over how the Indian armed forces can reduce the cost of pensions. And on Marathi Kirkiton, the Deshmukhs explore the works of the popular writer Ramchandra Chintaman Dere. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, please don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And remember, you can always check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube to take a look at what those channels are. We're also doing a small listener survey to understand how you respond to our shows and the advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It really helps us build better shows for you and understand what you're looking for from advertising and what we can talk to advertisers about who you are. Please go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It really would help us out. Thank you so much. And finally, would like to thank our sponsors for the network this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
So welcome back and welcome to the show, Yash. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Honestly, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Gauri.
So Yash, you started BOHECO back in 2013, and it sounds a bit like it was a group of friends coming together to do something fun. And of course you were working in the agriculture space, which isn't necessarily sort of doesn't sound very cool, but you've obviously tapped into something that is a very exciting product space to be in. So can you take us through a little bit about how you even ventured into the space, what you were doing before, and what made you zero in on hemp?
Yeah, so you did get it right. Bombay Hemp Company was started by 7 college friends from HR college. We were all, part of the student initiative called SIFE, which is Student and Free Enterprise. As a part of SIFE, we were the founding members of a social initiative called Project Chirag, which was a solar rural electrification project where we used to go to a lot of these underprivileged villages that had never seen electricity, and we used to provide them with solar kits and solar lanterns. Now, during those visits, we finished about 100, 120 odd villages when we just got done with college. But during those village trips, we did realize that in India, everything changed every 100 kilometers from language, culture, people, food, clothes. But there was one thing that was constant, and that was cannabis. It was just growing wildly like wildfire, and we came across this, stat which stated that 60% of Indian districts see the wild and feral growth of cannabis. Now, of course, you have so much time to and fro when you're going to the villages and you're just kind of finding new topics of conversation. We realize that there is abundance of this natural resource, but its commercial use is absolute zilch, right? People consider this only as a drug in the cities, etc. Now, we realized that when we were going to villages, apart from cannabis just growing ubiquitously, it was also being put to subsistence use. So people were either making ropes from the fiber to tie their cattle, they were consuming the seeds because their forefathers have been consuming it, it got passed on as cultural food, they're making clothes. So we very soon realized that, though people in the cities consider this plant as dope, people in the villages actually consider this plant as hope in a lot of different ways, right? From roti, kapda, makan, dawai, it was a part of their daily lifestyle. So that got us thinking. And then coincidentally, one of my co-founders, Jahan, was part Australian. He visited his family in Australia, came across a hemp shop in Australia, and like an excited kid in the candy shop, he went and picked up a lot of different hemp goodies, and he came back saying that, guys, remember that college trip? This is what I've come back with, the pants and soaps and shampoos and whatnot, everything under the sun. And that got us really excited. And we said, okay, guys, we have nothing to lose. Let's probably probe this further. I remember very clearly there was a national newspaper that ran a story that India employs more than 60% of its workforce in agriculture. But when you actually see its contribution to the GDP, it was less than 17%. Now, that didn't make any sense. There were so many people in agriculture, but its contribution was minuscule. So we realized if there's a problem, there's an opportunity. For us, the end was always agriculture, but the means to that end became cannabis. So that's how we ventured into this space, and there's no looking back.
Amazing. That's really interesting, actually, how the origins of BOHECO. But, I have so many questions based on what you just said. And, we've met in the past, and I also threw 100 questions at you in a minute. Yeah. So let's start with the really basic one, which I, for one, had, which is, obviously the first thing that comes to mind when you say cannabis is drugs and narcotics, right? So right. Can you just take us through, the difference between cannabis, hemp, marijuana, just these terms that get used sort of, so, there's bhang, there's ganja, charas, there's all of this. So take us just through the anatomy of the plant. And
Yeah, no, for sure. No, we often get asked this question, right? Because there is this massive myopic mindset or misconception that's linked to this plant, right? Now, the basic difference, they're completely different plants, right? Now, so in a sense, like, for example, look at it like the cat family. In the cat family, you have the tiger, the lion, but you also have the domesticated cat. It's the same family, but different species. Cannabis works in a similar way, right? There is high THC or a high narcotic variant, which is typically used for recreational/spiritual reasons. And then there is a low narcotic or low THC plant, which is typically used for industrial reasons. Now, apart from the narcotic element, which is THC, which is tetrahydrocannabinol, essentially globally the standard is that if it is 0.3% or less, it is industrial hemp. If it is more, then it goes in the realms of medical/recreational cannabis. Now, what's important to understand is that there are different parts of the plant that are used for different things. So, for example, hemp has over 25,000 proven uses, from tree-free paper, biofuel, food, clothing, shelter, medicine, name it really, and hemp can actually make it. The outer fiber of the stem, right, is typically used in clothing, right? The inner herd or the stick is typically used for in building material. The seed of the plant is used for nutrition. The leaves of the plant, which in India or colloquially speaking is referred to as bhang, what people also consume in Holi, etc., also gives you medicines, right? Then the flower, which is the bud, which is the only part of the plant which is actually under the NDPS Act and is illegal in India to use, right? That is the one that people usually end up using for recreational uses, right? But that also has medicinal benefits, right? So, as they say, that everything that has a use also has some abuse potential, right? Very similar plant in our existing Indian system is the poppy plant, right? We have an Indian spice called khaskhas, right, which is nothing but poppy seeds, right? You can make opioid-based medicines from the flower, but you can also make heroin or drugs like that from the flower, right? So it's completely like that. If depends on how the user chooses to use the plant and interact with it, because THC, which is the substance that gives you the sense of euphoria, is also a great pain reliever, is also a great appetite stimulant. So for a lot of patients, say for example, a lot of patients that go through chemotherapy, right, who lose their appetite, whose mood is all over the place, who can't sleep, actually THC helps them a lot, right? So it completely boils down to the usage of the plant. But if I were to just kind of give you a little more details on the names that are there, bhang is the leaves, ganja refers to as the flower of the top, and charas refers to as the resin of that flower, right? So charas and ganja are illegal and they're under the NDPS Act, and working with it is a criminal offense. But working with the leaves, the seeds, and the fiber is completely allowed under different regulations.
Okay. And just for everybody's benefit of everyone's information about the regulation of it, which we'll sort of talk more about, but hemp, I understand, or hemp food products have been present in the market for several years, but were previously regulated by the Ministry of Ayurveda and Yoga, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And, the local food authority, which is what we as restaurateurs are regulated by, which is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. They had not sort of set up any, standards for hemp in India. But this all changed last year, as far as I understand, in November.
That's correct.
And it is finally now regulated as a food source, right? So that's huge. I'm assuming that, having been in the industry for 7 years, you guys have a part to play in all of this happening. So take us through that and how you got the sort of government to actually finally regulate this and recognize this.
No, so since day one, it doesn't matter who the stakeholder is, whether government, whether scientists, whether farmers, researchers, all of the entire ecosystem, we really played a key role in changing the perception of this plant, right? In fact, the mission of Bombay Hemp Company is educate, cultivate, elevate. Educate being the first step, because we often say this to people, when it comes to cannabis, people don't have to learn about something. They have to first unlearn and relearn about the many benefits of hemp. And that unlearning, relearning process even happened with FSSAI, where our first meeting with them took place in the year 2016, where, even making them understand what part of the plant we were talking about, to submitting all kinds of global literature with regards to the benefits, standards, best practices, etc., that different countries have set in order to regulate hemp as a food source. Of course, common perception is that even if you consume hemp seeds, it will give you this high, which is just impossible. Even if you consume 1 acre of seeds, it can't give you a high, right? So even educating them about all of these nuances was an uphill battle, right? And we've come a long way. It took us 5 years for it to actually become a policy. And we're so glad it happened. It opens a world of opportunities and possibilities to kind of integrate hemp in different food-based applications.
Very interesting. So, you mentioned like it's been a 5-year process. So, was it a sort of industry-wide thing? Did you kind of, because now I see there are multiple players in the hemp business. So, was this something that you all were doing with your sort of competition in a way,
Yeah.
to approach the government or the ministry?
Yeah, since day zero, we're very cognizant of the fact that we're not just trying to build a new company, but a whole new industry. And when it comes to building a whole new industry, one Bombay Hemp company can really not cause a dent. You have to work together. There's this amazing saying that I read in a book that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And we've imbibed that philosophy in our way of working. It's so we don't look at competition as competition. We look at them as cooperation, collaboration. When the market and industry is so small, there's no point discussing these things that will actually pull you down. So we've actually worked very closely with a lot of different industry partners, and this is just one aspect. In all aspects, we do that, where we build consensus and we go as a larger voice. When the government also sees that there's so many people that are trying to champion this cause, the impact is multifold. So yes, we work with them. Of course, we've been associated with FSS as the official knowledge partners to regulate hemp as a food source, but we've always worked very closely with our partners from the industry to take this to the next level.
So you said something really interesting, which is that, even if you consume an acre of hemp worth of hemp seeds, you're not going to get a high. But I want to kind of flip that on its head, which is that, but can you potentially do damage to yourself, right? So say, overconsumption of something, like, has there been sufficient, testing of this product in India? And I'm not talking about sort of the rest of the world right now, but in India, is there enough information and sort of quality testing, side effect testing, etc., of the various products coming out of the hemp plant?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you asked that because it has happened. There are, in fact, for not just hemp, for any food products that's procured from natural sources, has certain guidelines and parameters to check for its toxicity and safety, right? At least us as an organization, I can speak for us, is that we always make sure to conduct detailed analysis from detailed pesticide testing, because the thing is, the source of this raw material is from the wild. It's collected and not cultivated at the moment. So it's very important to know what are you really bringing onto your supply chain. Apart from that, we conduct every batch to batch, we conduct detailed tests with NABL approved labs in order to check for its toxicity and safety aspects. It is way within the limits that have been set for any food source. It's not like for hemp specifically, there is a different regulation that's carved out. Like I mentioned earlier, the only real, kind of differentiator in hemp is that THC value, which will give you the sense of euphoria, but you don't find that in the seed. It is only found in the leaves and the flower of the plant. And because the seeds germinate from the flower, because they're a part of it, it has traces of it on the outer coating. But if you clean it and you put it through a certain grading and cleaning process, you even kind of get rid of that. So it's humanly not possible to get high.
Okay. And, I sort of noticed that you mentioned that it's collected, not cultivated. So,
Yes.
Like you said, it's in the wild and therefore it needs to be tested for certain things. In which case, what is proprietary about the product? So, for example, hemp seeds, which can be sort of sourced from any, I'm going to say forager for want of a better word, but what is proprietary about the product in that case?
No, so the thing is that hemp as a food, it was never recognized as a food source, right? And therefore, though it was, in fact, there are many such products in the market which are used locally, but FSSAI does not have regulation. There are many, lentils. There are many wild strains of lentils that are being used that are not making its way into the mainstream market because there are no regulations, right? Similarly, though hemp has been predominantly used by the people living in the Himalayan ranges. So mainly in Uttarakhand, Himachal, etc. That's where it's being used, right? Where they make things like bhang ke pakode, bhang ki chutney, etc. Where the seed is the main ingredient, right? But because it was never used in mainstream markets, what we know as mainstream markets, there were no regulations around it. Therefore, it's novel and not proprietary. right? Of course, the products that you can make from hemp can be proprietary in nature. So, for example, you make a hemp chocolate or hemp lemonade, or for lack of a better example, all of that would go under proprietary foods. But hemp as a seed ingredient is novel because it was never recognized before.
Okay. So, you've talked about all the other products that are possible, and I've sort of been reading up about the industry and heard that it's a potentially $1 billion opportunity in India.
Yeah.
Can you sort of break this down for us? What is the potential of this industry and why is it sort of so untapped?
Yeah. So there are many reasons, right? Why people kind of tout it to be $1 billion super crop. In fact, it's already reached $1 trillion as an industry globally, but in India, we're still catching up, right? Though there is massive potential, but there's a lot of work to do from policy and scientific work. Having said that, firstly, it is a very easy crop to grow. Now, India is an agrarian economy, right? We depend on a lot of different agri produce, right? There is no plant out there that can grow so tall so fast. It can grow in 90 to 120 days. So typically in a country like India, you can have up to 2.5 cycles of cultivation of this plant. The other thing is that all parts of the plant can be put to a certain use. Like I mentioned earlier, the fiber, the stem, the leaves, the seed, all parts can be put to use, which is actually India's largest problem with agriculture. During around Diwali, when we see all that pollution around the northern region, yeah, it's because agri waste is actually burned. Now, when you're looking at hemp, you're looking at a zero waste crop, which is not labor intensive, which is not resource intensive, and has over 25,000 applications. That, in a sense, makes it a no brainer, right? It's just because of lack of research and I'd say academic precedence, it's never really picked up, right, to the tune that it has picked up globally, right? So in India, I mean, it's an age-old crop. Hemp as a crop is actually older than religion. It's older than democracy as a concept. Sorry, older than some religions, not just religion, but it is a very ancient plant that has been put to many uses across the years. So this actually, given so many benefits of the plant and given how easy it is to grow, it makes it $1 billion opportunity. But if you were to talk about what is the most high value product, and as per global benchmarks, I think it's products that have medical benefits, which is CBD, THC, etc., that are being used for multiple medical conditions. That is the real deal, because patients' quality of life and improving that using a plant is a massive opportunity.
So, sort of forgive my ignorance, but is the CBD also extracted from the hemp seed? Or is hemp seed oil something completely different?
No, so the difference is from the two is that the seed range is only known for its nutritional profile. You will not get anything else apart from nutrients such as proteins, omegas, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, to name a few. From the leaves and the flower, you get cannabinoids, which is meant for therapeutic use. So the likes of CBD, THC, CBG, CBE, and there are 113 known cannabinoids that are used for different things, from inflammation, sleep deprivation, appetite stimulation, right? And different cannabinoids play a role in that. There is no chance in the seed you will get any of the cannabinoids. And similarly, in the leaves, you will not find any nutrients.
Got it. Understood. So what is the response from, say, doctors been for the oils that have medicinal characteristics?
Yeah. So for the doctors, again, there are some doctors that are entirely convinced, thanks to their exposure, thanks to their awareness. I'd say a good mixed bag of Ayurvedic doctors as well as modern medical practitioners. Ayurvedic doctors, because hemp has been mentioned in these Ayurvedic texts like umpteen number of times. In fact, in the Atharva Veda, it's considered as the top 5 sacred plants, right? But from a modern medical practitioner, because they look at any medicine very differently, where clinical trials, efficacy-based research, all of that is of paramount importance. So I'd say that there's a mixed view. Of course, there's a lot of curiosity because, I mean, it comes with cannabis, right? People's kind of ears are peaked. But there's a lot of understanding that people are doing, a lot of information gathering that people want to do before they can recommend it to their patients. So that's why we constantly do CMEs, right, where we continuously educate them about different global studies. Plus, we conduct our own clinical trials, provide them with that evidence, and slowly change that perception. We're very aware that Rome wasn't built in one day, and this is going to take us a little bit of pushing. But honestly, once we have a doctor work with our products, we've not seen them go back to something else because of the efficacy. So it's step by step. Seeing is believing, and I think we're on it.
So speaking of education, I've heard you give me that anecdote about, because you guys also have a label called B label, right? Which
Right.
is the clothing label, and people asking if wearing those clothes is going to give them a high.
Yeah.
And that, it sounds sort of ridiculous when you hear it, but in all fairness, it, I think, boils down to education about the product. So can you tell us how you're actually going about this?
Yeah. So again, education is a never ending process for us. We use our products as a means of education also, because only when people wear hemp and consume hemp will they really be able to see the benefits that we are seeing firsthand. So, of course, like you rightly pointed out, in fact, till date, the most frequently asked question to us till date was, if I wear this shirt, will it give me a high? Honestly, we don't think of it as a bad question, because it's a great conversation starter. It's at least getting people curious. And of course, a lot of people ask because of slapstick humor, but a lot of people even seriously ask, right? Only once, in the year 2015, we had done this survey, 2014, sorry, we had done this survey with regards to what is people's perception about hemp. When we did that survey, you won't believe it. When we asked people, what do you think of when we say cannabis clothing? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? 8 out of 10 people said it's probably a Bob Marley t-shirt. Right now, that cliche, when we actually did that survey in the year 2019, just before the pandemic hit, just to test the waters, 7 out of 10 people actually spoke about hemp clothing as a great material to wear, that's hypoallergenic, that's breathable, that looks like linen. These were the things that, so the functionality started coming out. People started looking at hemp as a fabric material and not as, what the typical cliche around this is. So that perception is changing. Of course, we've had to really knock a lot of doors and speak at so many different forums in order to change that perception. But I think that is always going to be an uphill battle. We have to constantly do that. And we're prepared for the most bizarre of questions. Now, we've kind of seen it all in the last 10 years. But I think once people start using it and experiencing hemp, is really no looking back. And one huge testament to that statement that I just made is that we have an astonishingly high repeat purchase rate, which is to the tune of 41%, right? Which is safe to say that at least 1 in 2 people are coming back for more, right? So yeah, that's how we go about the whole unlearning, relearning piece.
Interesting. You obviously started BOHECO as a bootstrap company, and your first round of funding created a lot of buzz with investors like Ratan Tata and Rajan Anandan, etc. And then you've had more investors and entrepreneurs join since then. Can you take us through this process of fundraising? How did you go about attracting some of the country's top industrialists? And, what was the process even for you selecting the right investors to come on board on your journey?
Yeah. No, so for us, it was extremely important that we have the right kind of supporters and backers in the organization, because when we started out, we are extremely young. We were about 20, 21 years old. And we as individuals did not have any credibility, right? It was a lot of people, in fact, just discounted us for being these young, passionate. In fact, a lot of people thought because we might be using the recreational side of it, were believers in the entire thing, which was never the case. But it was very tough to convince people who already made a judgment about you before you entered the room. So for us, and also the plant lacked credibility, right? The plant was always perceived as a drug. So when both of us didn't have credibility, we had to rely on external sources. And in fact, I remember in 2013, in the first month, we had our first visioning meet within us co-founders. And there was, of course, a series of questions that all of us were answering. One question was that who, if we once we reach a stage when we're seeking investment, who would be your first ideal investor? Hand to my heart, I'm not lying. All seven of us wrote Mr. Ratan Tata's name. So in a sense, we actually manifested it on that day, and we were hoping that happened. But what really helped us was that we never really let anyone tell us what we could or what we could not do, right? Our hearts were set, our families were supporting us, and we were very sure where we wanted to go. And when it's just the power of having the same vision and walking that same path. We were all very sure it's going to happen. We worked for 6 to 9 months just hoping that we can reach that stage where we can get Mr. Tata's blessings. And we just kept at it and kept wishing for it and trying for it, and we got it. But apart from that, also, there are a lot of other able investors who we got on board who could help us in various aspects of our journey, right? Whether it was managing relations with our political partners or the government partners, or how do you build a market for something that is so misconstrued over the years. So we got a lot of such able investors who didn't just come in for their name or the money, but even from a strategic lens who could point us to the right direction.
But what were some of the challenges you faced? I mean, I'm sure it wasn't an easy ride, just sort of going and asking for money and sharing a business plan. So, other than the obvious, which I'm sure you would have educated potential investors about in terms of the legality and the sort of that aspect of it, what were some of the challenges you faced?
So the biggest challenge was to make some people see the opportunity that we were seeing, right? That was out there. Of course, globally, because cannabis had made a certain name, a lot of these people were already aware of its potential. But a lot of people would presume or assume that doing something like this in India is going to really, like, you leave all your golden days behind you and you still be fighting for it, right? But that was the real challenge. And honestly, the work that we have done in research and policy development are the two main things that help people believe in us, right? Ultimately, what we realized, our first group of investors weren't really investing in the idea or the plant. They were just investing in the people that was going to help them materialize this entire idea, right? So I think it's just showing them that, something like this could also be done, showing the guts and the vigor to really achieve this. I think that is what really helped them believe in us. Mostly the questions were very similar. That is this even legal? What if someday this industry is going to be completely banned? All of these things are there. But if it's a constitutional change in order to make something, it's like literally depriving people in Kumbh Mela of their bhang, right? If they have to stop us, they have to stop them first, which we are sure that in a country like India, it's not going to happen. There's a certain precedence. And whatever we're doing it by the book. We're doing it with the government on our side. Most of our research and cultivation projects are in partnership with the government. So tomorrow we are collectively unfolding all the answers that we want for this industry to take shape. So I think that very cautious yet thorough approach is what appealed to them, and probably they thought we're the best fit to take this to the next level.
Interesting. When you were talking about manifesting an investor, it reminded me, I've been watching the show on Apple TV called We Crashed about Adam Newman. I don't know if you've seen it. So it's about, his whole WeWork journey. And he talks about how he manifested having the SoftBank founder, Masayoshi Son, become an investor. And of course, that's where it all started spiraling. But it's really funny that you said that. I'm like, this stuff is for real, right? It actually does happen.
It does work.
I need to start doing this now.
No, see, honestly, I have learned that in more ways than one. And now I'm a complete believer, whether in personal or professional life, that if you really want something, just go for it and you will get it. So that's our mantra, honestly, if you were to ask.
Yash, I want whatever you're on. So I'm just joking. But listen, just sort of, we're going to take a quick break. But before that, I want to ask you, what is the sort of appetite from companies from abroad wanting to come into India in this space and, get a share of this $1 billion market?
Honestly, India is a massive market, and not just for cannabis, for any industry, right?
Sure.
The global players do want a piece of this pie as well. A lot of people, in fact, we've been in touch with the world's largest cannabis companies, and everyone wants to at least know what's happening in India. And probably when the time is right, they will all even look at entering the market. But the thing is that India is a very different animal compared to the markets that they're playing in. You have to really be from here, understand how this system works in order for you to really crack it. So I think a lot of these guys are even looking at us as guinea pigs and seeing where do these guys make it. Only if they make it a certain way, probably show us the way, then they'll come in and try to do that. So yes, there is a lot of keen interest, but I think there is a lot of wait and watch that's happening in the at least global players. And I think once the market really opens up and the regulatory environment is way more conducive than what it is right now, you will see a surge of the number of global companies that will want to enter this market.
So, and by the way, for those listening in, I did an episode on this with Mr. Viral Jani about global players wanting to enter the Indian market. And he said exactly the same thing, which is that India is a complicated fish to tackle. So, that's interesting that you said the same thing from your experience. Great. We're going to take a quick break and be back for some really fun questions, possibly or may not be hemp related, Yash. So stay tuned.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
So welcome back, Yash. And, thank you so much for this super interesting insight into the world of hemp. So now I'm going to ask you some, kind of non-business related questions and, just say the first thing that comes to your mind. What's your go-to comfort food?
Oh, comfort food. I'm that way quite old school. So your dal, khichdi, pickle, papad, and buttermilk.
God, why does everybody say khichdi? This is just can I just tell you as a restaurateur, I think every episode of mine, I ask the same question. Literally, everyone says khichdi. I feel like I have to change my business model myself now.
No, I think when you say comfort food, I think because we're so in tune to consuming so much different kind of foods, I think your go-to food is always going to be that food that your mother gave when you were a bad boy.
Oh, God. Okay, what's a great book, or I don't know if you listen to podcasts, but podcasts that you've read in the recent past?
Great book. I'd say 0 to 1. I think it was an awesome book because I've realized being in this business that, India is a country that goes very well from 1 to 100 and we're champions at it. But going from 0 to 1, it does take a lot of effort. And we're doing that real time. And I really resonated with that book. So I'd say 0 to 1 would be the best book. Yeah.
What's the best investment you've made in your journey so far? I don't mean financial investment. I mean,
Yeah, no, to be honest, I'd say nurturing a lot of different types of relations, right? Whether government stakeholders or patient communities, right? They more or less listen to the same language, which is generating clinical evidence in order to show that, okay, this really helps people at large. So I think our investment in our, clinical and research-based work, I think that is the real reason we have gotten this far. And I don't think anything else can substitute that.
Who have been your role models or mentors?
Oh, wow. Many immediate role models, of course, are my own father at home, who's also come through a similar journey. But if I were to look outward, then Mr. Ratan Tata. And I've said it before also, but yeah, he would be by far.
Well, you're very lucky to have him at your
Absolutely.
Access to him at your fingertips. So that's
Absolutely.
Amazing. What's your definition of success?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I'd say when your work really impacts someone else's life or lives, I think that's the real definition of success. What I do for my daily living, if it really helps people by and large beyond my immediate circle, I think that is the real definition of success because we're all human social beings that are meant to move forward together. And I think helping one another there's nothing more important than that.
And finally, what's your message to startup entrepreneurs?
Many messages, but one that is very close to my heart is to be patient and persistent at the same time. Be patient for the long-term goal, but be persistent for the short-term objectives. I think that is the secret to our success. We never really gave up. We were constantly on it, but we were also very patient at the same time. Good things come to the people that wait.
Well, you're definitely a testament to that. So, listen, thank you so much for being on the show. And I wish you the very, very best. And I'm sure there's lots and lots of exciting things to come. So good luck.
I really appreciate you having me on the show, Gauri. Thank you so much. It was honestly my pleasure to be a part of this show and speaking with you and sharing everything that I know.
Wow. So perhaps there is some truth to all the hype around hemp and the trend of it being the next big superfood. Maybe it's only a matter of time before hemp is the new haldi or avocado in our lives, and for good reason. In fact, we've just introduced hemp hearts and hemp seed oil at Max Street Cafe, so next time you're there, check it out in our retail section. I hope you enjoyed tuning in today. Do catch the earlier episodes when you get a chance, and more importantly, I would love to hear from you with your thoughts on the show. You can find me on Instagram at Gauri Devidayal, or on Twitter at Gauri Details or LinkedIn. Either way, sit back and relax because this round is on me.
Do you find yourself in a room full of people talking about investments and insurances and feel left out? Do you also want to understand how to spend your money wisely? Then you have come to the right place. Welcome to SBI Life Presents A Sip of Finance, a women-exclusive podcast where we break down difficult financial topics into simple and straightforward episodes with your host, Priyanka Acharya, a finance expert who's been in the industry for 14 plus years. And not just in English, but in 7 more languages. So tune in every Tuesday for fresh episodes on the IVM Podcast Network and all major podcast streaming platforms.
Don't you think that if everyone around you is getting smart, you better be smarter? Hey there, I'm the traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh and I'm back with season 2 of my podcast to make you smarter. Smarter with Sid. What's this season's focus about? Well, it's about 10-minute nuggets that will make you stand out at work. It's time to go from smart to smarter. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and become smarter with Sid.